Hello and welcome back, and that's right, today we want to talk about Plex media server performance on the brand new DS1823xs Plus, Synology's new quad-core 10 GBE powered XS Series 8-bay. And although we're going to be testing a multitude of different files ranging from 720p to 1080 and 4K, a few things we have to get out the way, out the back, very early doors on this before we go any further. So if you've watched these videos before, you know exactly what I'm about to say. But so if you want to skip all that, go forward about 3 to 4 minutes. But for those of you that are new to the Plex series, let me explain a lot of the rules and the disclaimers. Number one, we are accessing the DS1821xs Plus here on the local area network. We're not accessing it remotely via the internet. We are utilizing this on a local area network because we can't make one setup that pleases everyone. But the course of these videos is to show you how well this NAS under pressure will play certain files, and in order to do and simulate a lot of that pressure, we've got to go in directly via the LAN. If you're accessing it remotely, then you are going to have a slightly different experience, but hopefully some of the indications in some of our test files will show you. The next thing I want to mention is that I am utilizing and accessing this NAS. Again, let's bring up the information center with its architecture there on screen, which is going to be very, very important there later on, over the local area network on the web browser. Okay, now I could have used the Windows client. I could have used the Windows client here to access the 1823. I could have used the mobile client on my phone and access the device. Why am I using the web browser when so few people use the web browser to access Plex Media Server? Nice and simple, because I need the system to simulate conversion, transcode, encode, decode, any one of those. What they are when a file needs to be adapted to be better suited to an end user. Now, that end user on a client device might well be utilizing a mobile phone at a bus stop where they've got a limited internet connection, or using a small screen where they don't really want to use some 8K video file on their mobile phone. They want to use a nice smaller version, maybe 480p. Now, in order to do that, you need to reshape that file, encode, decode, transcode, converting. Now, you could have some devices, like that phone, that allow you that action to happen on the client side, the reshaping on the phone. So a lot of devices, NVIDIA Shield has that option as well, the option to reshape the file using the client side application. But there's a lot of other devices, such as Amazon Fire Stick, such as PlayStation 4, and I believe 5 as well, that do not allow client-side conversions. Also on top of those, they do not support HEVC, highly efficient video codec, a compression technique that is utilized for massive movie screen cinematic productions to be squeezed into a transportable package file that you can plug in to your from the comfort of your own sofa. Now, H.264, which has been around for quite a while, that does that compression, is built on an open source model and anyone can use it. But HEVC, otherwise known as H.265, that is privately developed and requires a license to be played on a client device natively. Now, this app I have here on screen has a native HEVC client because my Windows has an HEVC license. But a lot of you might be playing on those devices that don't, and that's why we use the web browser, because the web browser will make sure that you are playing a file without the license if you don't have it. And those of you watching this that are going to be utilizing the system for these conversions will want to know if the 1823xs is up to task there, because despite its incredibly aggressive CPU, and it is a powerful quad-core 3.35 GHz CPU, 4-core 8-thread that can be burst up to 3.6 GHz, and 8 GB of memory, despite that architecture, it's not an integrated graphics CPU. It's not a processor that has an onboard component dedicated to graphics. Something I will show you later on in this video why that's tremendously important if you're going to be running very high-end files that require the conversion. If you don't need them reshaped, you'll be fine. But let's crack on with some early testing. Nice and simple. On the right-hand side of the screen, we're looking at the CPU more than anything, but we will be referring at times to the memory or RAM and also the bandwidth being consumed there. Also, during the course of this video, I'm using OBS and I've got myself here at the top right of the screen, but I may remove myself from the top right of the screen when I feel that it may be utilizing too many resources and it may be affecting those results. But straight away off the bat, if we mute this, if we go and play for something nice and straightforward there, and again this is on the 1823, this is a 720p file, it's The Matrix, we all know that film, and it's running in a file format H.264 compression, and it's a 720p file at 1.5 megabits per second. Very straightforward, very easy. We can play this file, we can skip around, it's absolutely fine, no delay. We weren't expecting any problems there at all. Next up, we can go to a 1080p file. A 1080p file, we normally go for Little Shop of Horrors. Once again, remember, we are using the 1823, but later on we will be referring to other NASs. But if we play this file here, 1080p, H.264 file at 3 megabits per second, we can open it up on the bottom of the screen. CPU, nothing, it's barely broken out of 1% utilization. And remember, while this is playing, we are using this Synology NAS with a whole bunch of applications just sitting there waiting to be used in the background, which is another reason why I'm really impressed by this NAS. But still nonetheless, no problems, no delays there whatsoever. So if we make our way into 4K files, we're going to start with our 4K trailer files there. So these are our test files here that we use, are all 4K, but in varied different degrees. And you can see, if we zoom in a little bit there, some of them are H.264 and some of them are H.265, otherwise known as HEVC. And that's when the system is going to have to convert those files, because we're playing this on a device that doesn't have the license in that browser. Again, I'm going to stress this, if you are utilizing a hardware client device, NVIDIA Shield, Xbox as well, Xbox has the option of adding an HEVC license, or you're using a device that allows client-side encoding and transcoding, you'll be fine. In those scenarios, you're not going to need the hardware resources to change that file, okay? So bear that in mind. So the first file we play, Into the Cave of Wonders, 4K, lovely and straightforward. We open up, we're playing in the original format there, and as you can see, it's playing it immediately there. CPU, once again with this 4K file, not blinking, nothing. And if we fast forward, we'll go to 1 minute 17. File's playing, no drop in frame rate, absolutely fine there. We're seeing the smallest hesitation every time we click forward on that file, but really, it's playing absolutely fine there. Next, we're going to go for Roast Duck. Now, this is a 60 megabits per second bitrate file, and it's HEVC. Now, watch what happens when we play this file. First things first, the system needs to convert the file. It doesn't automatically play that file. It forces it to be converted because of that lack of an HEVC license. Also, look at that CPU utilization over here. The CPU is hitting 95% utilization. It is playing the file. It's playing the file. That's great. But we're still using an obscene amount of CPU utilization to play back this file. Now, to give you some understanding of the importance of server-side conversions and client-side conversions, what we're going to do is come out of that file, because we've used all that utilization, and this time we're going to open up that Plex Media Server app, and this time on my Windows PC using that client application with my system having an HEVC license, we're going to play that exact file again. Don't worry about it not responding. Almost certainly we're hitting quite heavy utilization with OBS and everything running in the background, so don't be surprised if Plex Media Server is taking an extra minute or so on this local PC to catch up. But while it does that in the background, another thing I'll talk about here is looking at a different NAS. Now, I mentioned earlier on that if you use a NAS that's got client-side transcoding on board, server-side CPU integrated graphics, then you will see different results. And that is what we're talking about here with the DS423 Plus. This NAS here runs with an Intel Celeron quad-core processor. Much lower overall power consumption and a lower architecture CPU as well. But because this CPU has integrated graphics, watch what happens when we play the same file we just tried to play on this 500 quid NAS. Not the £2,000 NAS, but the £500 NAS. We open up Plex, and as you can see, Plex is on a different identity here on that IP. I may have to disable myself here so you can see this on the screen a little better. So let's disable that camera feed there. So whereas the 1823 is on this IP, this new connection is on 239. So we go into the DS423, we go into the same 4K test file, and again we're going for roast duck. We play that file, and not only are we of course we're still going to need to transcode that file, but if we have a look, we let this file, it's already transcoding, it's already buffering tremendously far into the distance. We'll let it get a little further away ahead, and while it's doing that there, we can make our way over, and as you can see, utilization has barely left 14% in the case of utilizing a cheaper NAS but has integrated graphics on board. And the big takeaway I need you to take from this while we're doing this is that as good as the 1823xs is, and it is a powerful system and you'll be able to do a heck of a lot, and it is suitable for Plex, just note that if you're going to be reliant on server side conversions, then it may not be the choice for you. But we come out of that, and the same goes if we go into that Plex client application. If we log in to the same NAS, that 1823, we go into those test files, we find that file once again that we've just tried to play. So again, we go in there, we go into the list of files, we go to the library, we play back roast duck, play it there, open it up there on screen, open up, as you can see, we're playing at the original format, and at the same time, we're able to see the utilization of the 1823. We're seeing it bump, certainly, but we're not seeing it go nuts, and that's the point. It's this idea about if you are going to be playing your Plex Media server files in a scenario where you're reliant on the server to do a lot of the heavy lifting, that lack of integrated graphics will make all the difference. So we'll come out of that there, we'll come out of that file, and we'll continue with our testing. And just in case you thought it was a fluke, we can go ahead. This is a 30 megabit, so half the bit rate, but it's still an H.265 or HEVC file. And we're seeing early buffering while it has to buffer the file. And look at that CPU utilization once again. It's extraordinarily high. And again, if we bring me back here on screen, bring that back there, just even the frame rate drops are notable. Yes, I've come in and out of OBS, but just bear that in mind with the utilization throughout Plex testing, because if we were to go to a lesser degree of conversion and convert down, so not even trying to maintain 4K, and we chose, for example, to break it down to a 1080p at 8 megabits per second, which is a substantial downgrade in quality and frame rate. Even if you downgrade to that lesser degree, you're still going to have that high amount of CPU utilization. It's not even down to the server still trying to play the original file. Again, we'll come out of that, and I'll stop saying again, I apologize, I have been critiqued on that before. If you try to play original H.264 files, things are absolutely fine. For example, Spider-Man No Way Home, if we play back this file here, this is an H.264 file, playing in the original quality, it still is a 4K file, 34.8 megabits per second reported playback within Plex. We've seen the buffering is taking place lovely and quickly, it's still staying ahead of playback, and utilization is low. So you'll be able to do multiple sessions very, very easily, and with that amount of utilization, you are going to be able to connect with many, many, many 4K files being played at once, as long as you're not using server-side conversions there. And we'll come out, try another file, and again, this will be Dune, and again, this is the Dune trailer file, HEVC, once again. And I know I'm being repetitious. I'm well aware that I've kind of hopefully really proven my point about HEVC files, but it's just in case you're thinking it's those files we are testing that is a limitation. It really isn't. And that heavy duty utilization is just time and time and again what is problematic about playing these files on here. It doesn't stop you necessarily, because it will play the file, as we've seen. It will take just longer to buffer the file, but it will eventually play that file. It just won't do a fantastic job in doing so. So Another thing we have to talk about when it comes to the utilization and playback of files at this scale is what is the limitations of H.264. Because, for example, we have two files at H.264 down here that, although we don't have to worry about conversions and transcoding, we do have to think about bit rates, because the higher the bit rate, that is going to be the full tunnel and bandwidth being accessed. Yes, we're accessing this on the local area network, and therefore bandwidth consumption, we got plenty to play with, but remotely that could be problematic. So for example, if we play this file here, this is the Avengers Endgame trailer, and again, this is an H.264 file, but it's the 40 megabit file. That's a lot to be playing with. And in terms of bandwidth consumption, we should be fine, but we're still going to see early spikes, which of course on a local area network are fine. But if you were accessing this remotely, that's quite a lot of data. And for a lot of you, this would be another point where you would go, oh, I'm not sure about that much bandwidth being utilized. I think I'm going to convert that file. And then when you convert the file, then you're going to encounter that lack of a hardware integrated graphics being able to support you. And talking of hardware integrated graphics and hardware support assisting you, we haven't even touched on audio media, because much like video media, there are some codecs in terms of audio file formats, I should say, that aren't officially licensed by all devices. So for example, MP3 and WAV will play on anything. But if you're trying to play an audio file or an audio track that is FLAC, FLAC file, or MP or MP4A or OBB, these audio formats can require the client hardware that you're utilizing, again, mobile, tablet, TV, whatever, to change that file. And again, that's where the hardware utilization will creep up. But again, with H.264, if we go for our biggest file here, at least in the 4K trailer stakes, this is our Top Gun trailer here, a 4K file, but it is an enormous file at that, at 80 megabits per second. This is when we start to see that utilization. And again, if we make our way to the top, I know you can't quite make it out because my head's in the way, but look at that utilization of these larger files here. Yes, we are talking about megabits, but 238 megabits is still 23 megabytes. We're accessing this on a gigabit 1G connection going into a switch. That's 100 meg, and I'm using almost a quarter at one point of that for this file. If you were accessing this remotely, that could really be something of a bandwidth drain. So even on the local area network, we see limitations like this in order to play back the file. CPU is doing fine, but it's the bandwidth that can be problematic there. Now, if we were to take things to their natural extreme, we would look at the jellyfish files that I've tested in other videos. These are the files that we use to really push the boundaries of what a system can play back and convert. And these would largely come down to these three files at the end: 200 megabit H.264, 200 megabit H.265, and 400 megabit H.265. So if we go for the 200 megabit file, and zoom out a little bit there, we're probably going to encounter that bandwidth consumption issue. We're going to be able to play it, but it's going to have to, force this file through quite substantially. And once again, going back to the bandwidth, we can see that larger bandwidth getting spiked up again. So it's not playing organically there. Whereas if we come out of that file and this time play the 200 megabit HEVC file there, so remember, this is technically a harder file because obviously it needs that conversion for that file to go through. Although it needs the conversion, that conversion allows the system to reshape itself to be better suited to the bandwidth. So the result is that the file will play eventually, if I don't look like a dingus if it doesn't play, which it does. But at what cost? I'll tell you what cost. That cost is in the 90s% in terms of CPU utilization. So it's not really a win-win scenario with the file pausing, because at the bottom, buffering is being outpaced by playback. So I'm not really going to call this a success either. And I think while we play that last file, the 400 megabit file, which it probably will play with heavy CPU utilization. Remember, this 400 megabit bitrate HEVC file is 1.4 gigabyte size for 30 seconds of footage, it will probably play this file, but it will use a substantial and unworkable amount of hardware resources in order to get the job done. And it won't even play smoothly when playback outpaces the conversion there at the bottom of the screen. And particularly if you were going to use this NAS for surveillance with a few cameras or a VM or any of the business apps, it's just another reason why this system is probably not best for multimedia users who are going to need any kind of conversion or transcoding. Again, if you're running HEVC and your client devices don't support it, you're going to need converting. If you're running remote access for Plex and you're using client devices that aren't going to be great for heavy 4K or 8K or anything like that, you're going to need converting. And if you're going to be utilizing complex audio formats that aren't supported by your destination client device, you're going to need client transcoding. And that's when a NAS like the 1823, which can do so much with its hardware, will see the strain. But if you don't have any concerns about HEVC support on all your clients, you're going to be playing over the network, the LAN network. You're not going to be converting anything, and fully fledged, full access 4K, the 1823 can run a substantial number of simultaneous 4K file playbacks at once. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Let me know in the comments if you have. If you want to learn more, there should be a link to the article where we go through these test results below at NAS Compares. And if you need help choosing the right NAS for your Plex media server setup and you're can't see the wood for the trees, use the free advice section over on NAS Compares, linked in the description, and the free community forum, Ask NAS Compares as needed. And finally, if you found this video helpful, and if, very important, if you were going to shop at Amazon anyway, please use the links in the description to take you there. By doing so, anything you buy from there results in a kickback here as Amazon associates. Me and Eddie at NAS Compares, it is literally just us, and that bit of money goes into helping us do what we do, and it's a passive way that you can support content creators like us. Other than that, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.